So when you say that a bank is owned by Rothschilds, like the Bank of England or the Reserve Bank of Australia, what does that mean?
All right, so major shareholders, I guess, is the first
So
thing.
they're a private bank
Yep.
with shareholders. Both
Exactly
the Reserve
right.
Bank of Australia and the Bank of England
Yep.
are private banks with shareholders, and
Yep.
the major shareholders are the Rothschilds consortium.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing is that the decisions that are made by the Reserve Bank
Yeah.
are all determined by their board. Okay, so the Reserve Bank has a board of executives that control it.
Yeah.
If you look at that board and you look at what their other positions are, to me it seems a little bit of a conflict of interest to have a board member of the Reserve Bank of Australia who is also a director of Woolworths or a CEO of Origin Energy.
Who do you think should be the board?
Well, the board should be public members that don't have an affiliation to a major corporation, because as soon as you've got a connection to a major corporation, then there's obvious influence that can be made there. Okay,
Yeah,
so
conflict of interest.
Totally, because I mean, at the end of the day, the RBA is never going to release any form of, or they're not going to determine interest rates and things like that are going to disadvantage those companies that they're also heads of. You know,
And that's where, when I went and looked up the RBA website, and it said they've got 3 things they're supposed to do: maintain the stability of the currency in Australia, maintain full employment in Australia, and maintain the economic prosperity and welfare of the people of Australia. But they don't actually do those last 2.
No.
Around full employment and welfare of the people.
No.
They just maintain the currency of Australia, which sort of proves what you're saying, that they've got a conflict of interest in that they're maintaining the currency, which I would gather is in the interests of their business interests,
Totally.
at the expense of full employment and welfare of the Australian people.
That's right. And look, something else that I haven't looked into enough, but I know that it's a similar situation in Australia to in America, where corporations are now legally considered individuals. Okay,
They have the status of people.
They have the status of people. So, if you look at those last 2 things that the RBA is supposed to be responsible for, well, when it comes to looking after the prosperity of the people, that doesn't necessarily refer to you and me. That may refer to a major corporation, okay, that's considered a person. So, you know, I mean, to me, it's pretty obvious that that their focus isn't what it should be. You know, if they were adhering to those 3 guidelines, then Australia would be a very different place and people would be living.
So is the board answerable to the Minister for Finance or the Treasurer?
Well, the board is supposed to be answerable to Parliament, and anything that happens through the board is supposed to go through Parliament, but I don't think that that's really the case as far as the way it happens. I mean, it'd be after the fact, okay? So they do whatever they do as far as whether it's altering interest rates or releasing more money, whatever. But the government would be told about that after it's happened.
So they're supposed to be independent. But so they're supposed that's about being independent from government.
Yeah.
That's a separation of power, so that they can make decisions without undue influence from government.
That's right.
But what's ended up happening is a setup of undue influence of corporations.
That's exactly
instead.
right. Yeah.
So are you saying that the Treasurer or the Minister for Finance should have more influence, and that it should be governed more in the interests of the population?
Yeah, that's been one of our big statements, I guess, right from the word go, that we need to give the power of issuing money and controlling the finances of the country back to the Treasury.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we've got a government that's corporately owned and controlled at the moment, so it's not an ideal situation, but if we can change the situation, then certainly having the power in the government's hands to be able to control interest rates, etc., is the way it should be.
So that they can do these 3 objectives rather than just focus on the top one and make the economy something that serves the population and serves the people rather than just serves business.
That's right, exactly right. Because, I mean, I guess Australia's sitting pretty at the moment compared to the rest of the world, and we've got things a lot better, which is what's making our fight a lot harder, I guess, is that a lot of people don't see that we're in a situation where we need to change anything. You know, Australia's all right. I'm living all right. I'm paying my mortgage. I've got food on the table. You know, roof over my head.
Yeah.
Things are good. You know, I don't have it bad like they do, and you know, the economy is not collapsing like it is in Europe. But I don't think people realise the level of control and the fact that well, we're being kept afloat at the moment for certain reasons, but it's not necessarily meaning that that's a good thing.
And we're vulnerable. It's a global system.
Totally.
We can't take it for granted.
Yeah.
And why wait until it gets that bad? Why not look at it and go, well, what can we do
to make sure we don't go down that road?
Problems like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So can I ask you about also on the website? There's stuff about Iran, Cuba, and North Korea are the only they're the only countries in the world where the banks are not owned by the Rothschilds. So does that mean they don't have a central bank, or they've got a central bank but it's government owned?
They have it, yeah. So
what does that mean?
Unlike so somewhere like Iceland, for example, they did away with their central bank, so they don't have a central bank system over there.
Yeah.
Iran, Cuba, North Korea have a central bank, but it is government owned. Okay, so which means that it doesn't have the same level of influence that every other central bank does.
Yeah. So they're the sort of two extremes: not having a central bank at all, or having a central bank that's government owned. So with Iceland not having a central bank at all, does that mean that their interest rates and things like that, they have absolutely no control over it? It's set by the international market.
I'm pretty sure with Iceland, what they've done, and we've started to do a bit of research on Iceland. We've got a bit of information, but I'm pretty sure with Iceland they had like the Treasury was issuing the money, then they got a central bank got brought into Iceland, and their whole economy went down the pooper. Then they got rid of the central bank system back out of Iceland, and they've gone back to a government issuing like.
They also, like in 2008, they basically had a full revolution, peaceful revolution. They had people protesting, and there were so many people. Like, I guess it's easy with a small country, but such a large percentage of the population. I think they've got like 340 or 50,000 people, so it's even smaller than Tassie. Protested for so long and in such high numbers right outside Parliament that eventually, and this is after they voted in their left government, and they didn't. But people wanted the country to leave the IMF and go independent, and they didn't. The new government that they voted in, so they did all this protesting, and eventually the government decided, well, I think the country had basically come to a bit of a standstill, and eventually they all just left Parliament escorted by security, and that was it. They rewrote their constitution with everyone getting some input on the internet. I think a lot of the key people behind the movement set up websites and everything so that everyone could have a say in how they rewrote the constitution. Got lawyers involved in everything, and they did that. They set up a new parliament, started from scratch, and then they set up a new system that didn't involve the IMF. As to what exactly that is, I don't know. But I have heard that since 2008, their economy has now started to pick up and is doing really well. And there's a lot of the media still try and discredit them all the time because they don't even talk about it much. I mean, most people don't even know that. I mean, it's a whole country had a revolution only a few years ago, and virtually no one knows because the media at large didn't talk about it at all because they didn't want countries like Greece getting the idea, which they did anyway, to cut themselves off from the IMF. But that's what the majority of protesters in Greece would like. And then that's why they get sort of labelled as lazy bludgers, and they focus on how early they retire and all this other stuff. And I don't even think that's at all true. I mean, they have compulsory military in Greece. Everyone has to serve 12 months in the military when they're young, and it's hardly a lazy country.
No, not at all. I mean, this is the biggest problem and the biggest obstacle that we face is the fact that the media is still so well controlled and governed by the same, and which are all got ties to the same group that are controlling the global economy. So yeah, it's very hard for a media outlet to get up and tell the truth about what's going on and what happened in Iceland, for example, without bringing down the whole system, which they don't want to do. So, but I mean, to me, I can see it sort of, Europe is on the cusp of, you know, major shake-up. I think something's got to give.